Elmer Slosky, and this is it's about 2:20 on July 13, 2006. And I'm speaking with Elmer Hamilton at his home at 5100 Cochrane Mill Road in Fairburn, Georgia. And Elmer is sitting right opposite me, and we've spent some time going over his background. And Elmer is going to describe his family background, where he grew up and what it was like growing up, and grandparents and parents and whatever. So you just get started.
Oh well, as you said, I grew up in South Carolina, Hilton Head, South Carolina, and it's not what it is. It wasn't then what it is today. It was always inaccessible to the general public. Hilton Head was an island all to itself, and I was born there. I went to school there, went to a one-room schoolhouse, as we said.
Wow.
And everybody was sitting in the same room. And a cousin of mine, Reggie Campbell, he's related to Emory Campbell.
The one who spoke at your dinner.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
He was one of my teachers. At the time, he was one teacher. But as this time grew on, there was several other teachers, but it was always one room, schoolhouse.
And was the schoolhouse on Hilton Head?
Everything was on Hilton Head. We got to leave Hilton Head occasionally by boat, by a man of the name of Mr. Charlie Simmons. He died just the beginning of this year, and he was up in age when he died, and he had a motorboat that took us to Savannah. He took a lot of people to Savannah, and anybody that farmed on Hilton Head, they would grow some beans, some peas, and some, watermelon and stuff like that. If there was anything over, they would send it with him to Savannah. I guess it took about I can imagine about 3 hours to get there to Savannah by boat.
How long did it take to get from Hilton Head to the mainland in Savannah?
That's what I'm saying. By that way, it took about three hours.
Yeah.
You went from Hilton Head through to Fusky, past the Fusky, and on to Savannah. It was about 3 hours by the boat, because it wasn't one of the speeding boats that they have now. It was the old boat, and it took its time, and we went on that boat to Hilton Head. I mean, on that boat to Savannah.
And did you ever take, the way that the causeway goes now onto Bluffton, did you ever take was there a boat going to Bluffton?
Yes. Very few occasions we had the opportunity to go to Bluffton, because at that time, Bluffton was nothing there, it's just a few people.
Okay.
And we took the boat. You could take a rowboat over to Bluffton.
Okay.
And I went to Bluffton that way, but that took only about an hour or about 45 minutes to an hour.
So how did you live on Hilton Head until, when did you go to high school there too?
I left Hilton Head when my mother passed, and I left in 1950. But leaving Hilton Head, this was temporary for me because I always went back during the summer, and I constantly stayed over there.
Did your grandparents live on Hilton Head?
No, my grandparents was deceased. By the year I was born.
On both sides?
Yes, my father, grandfather, and my mother. I was told about them, but my great-grandfather, whose name was Isaac Hamilton, he was a slave, and when he was freed, he had enough money to buy many acres of land on Hilton Head, and today I still have that land which he purchased. Some of it was purchased. Much of it was sold to people, but my mother saved hers, and when it got to me and my uncle, about 10 acres left. Yes, we could just kept it, and today, now that you mentioned it, I got a call today that someone want to sell a portion of the 10 acres, and he's not going to be able to do that. Yes. Somebody cut it off.
Growing up on Hilton Head, you
Yes.
mentioned that you used to take trips to Savannah and or take a rowboat over to Bluffton. And did you have any brothers and sisters who grew up with you on Hilton Head?
My younger brother, who is Steve, he lives in South Carolina now, in a place called Dale, South Carolina. Another brother, Isaac, named after my great-grandfather, he passed away in Florida quite a few years ago. And my brother is concerned, is he's in South Carolina today. Yes. And
do you have any other brothers?
I have some half-brothers who his brother, who's been in the labor movement under longshoremen. Herbert, his name is Scott. He's about 80-something years old now. He's still living. George and Jimmy Frazier, who lived in New York, because my father his father gave him lots of money, but my father had land, and he allowed him to go to New York, and he got involved with the lady and got married up there, and he used to come back and forth all of the time, and he have how many children? Three sons now living, and one daughter who has died since that time. But we all get along just like we ought to, brothers.
You mentioned that when you were 13, after your mother passed away, you left Hilton Head. And where did you go, and who did you live with when you were 13?
I left Hilton Head. My aunt who lived in Savannah, her name was Eloise Brown, and her husband. They took my sister and myself to Savannah, although there was Steve and Isaac, what their father wanted. He was living over in Beaufort, and he wanted them. But my mother, I would say, never wanted us to separate. And
but what was your sister's name?
Minnie.
Minnie. And was she older or younger?
She's younger than I am. She lives in Philadelphia today.
Okay.
Yes.
And so you and Minnie and Steve and Isaac all went to Savannah?
No, just Minnie and myself went to Savannah.
Okay.
Isaac and Steve went over to Beaufort.
Okay.
So we had to communicate between Steve and Isaac, and it was not easy being young, and they were younger than I was, and but we maintained the contact.
So did you? What was your aunt's name?
Eloise Brown.
Eloise Brown. And
Yes.
Did she have children? Or?
Yes, she had only one son when I moved there in 50. She had only one son, but in years to come, she had another son, Ray. I guess about 6 children she had after that.
So how long did you live with your aunt?
Oh, I lived with my aunt from 13 until I finished high school.
Did you go to high school in Savannah? Which high school did you attend?
Beach High.
Beach
in
High School.
Savannah, Beach High. And I stayed with her, and I left my aunt and for home in 55, I think it was.
Okay.
In 55, when I joined the Navy, and I left.
Did you join the Navy from Savannah?
From Savannah.
Uh-huh.
And I was,
Why did you join the Navy?
I don't know. I was used to the water, and I liked the Navy, and I just joined. No particular reason. I didn't want to join the Army. I wanted to join the Navy.
Sure.
Yes, and
and where were you stationed in the Navy?
oh wow.
That's it.
I was first. I went to the day that I went to South Carolina. You left South Carolina and you go to Columbia, South Carolina. That where they find out whether or not they are going to use you. And there was thousands of guys there, and and I found out that I passed the tests and everything. And that afternoon, I didn't know it, but I shouldn't have did it. They asked for 10, they had room for 10 guys to travel tonight. It was the same night by plane to Atlanta and on to Chicago. And it was the first part of January. And I don't need to tell you, coming from the South and going in Chicago in that time of the year. But
So you were in that group of 10 people?
I was the 10th person. I was way in the back. I was waving, and because nobody was, a lot of guys wasn't anxious to leave, But I got.
Your experience in the Navy when you first were inducted, and you mentioned that you got to be the 10th sailor on a plane from Savannah to Columbia, South Carolina, to Atlanta to Chicago.
To Chicago.
So you ended up in January. I guess that was 1955 in Chicago.
And you know what January is in Chicago, when it is winter time. Oh my goodness!
Was that the first time you'd been any distance from Hilton Head or Savannah?
Yes, that's the first time I had the opportunity to be on a plane, to be that distance away from my home.
Had you ever left Georgia or South Carolina before you went on that plane?
I know. Where would I go?
Have you ever left Savannah? In other words, most of your life was spent in Chatham County or Savannah?
The time that I was there, I was in Chatham County, except in the summertime when the school was closed. My father would take me with him in Florida, and my father was a shrimper.
Okay.
And he took me. We used to go to Campeche, Mexico. He used to steer his boat from Florida, from Tampa or St. Petersburg to Campeche.
But you used to work summers on the shrimp boat.
About 3 or 4 summers.
Wow.
I work on the
when you're in high school.
Yes, but those were, I don't think that would encourage me to join the Navy, but because I hated that when we would sleep all day and they would work all night.
Oh.
And when you bring that net up, bring the net up in the morning, oh man.
Hard work.
Oh, well, it wasn't so much hard work. It was hard work too. But the different smell.
Yeah.
Oh man, I had to leave. I had to leave, man. When I said leave, I had to go inside the boat, and we did that for a number of years. And
so you're used to spending time on the ocean on a boat.
Yes, that's the only time when during the summer I would go away to Florida and to be with him during the summer, and then I would spend time in Florida with him at home. I would go down there and we would pals around in the city and stuff. And my father was a person, he was educated through Penn School.
Oh, really?
and my father always had a way of making some money, and he always had money, and he always had fine cars and clothes, and the sheriff and the police around St. Augustine knew that and didn't like him for it. And every time they would catch me driving the car, they would pull me over or pull somebody over just to check us out. And so one night we went to Daytona Beach, and my half sister was driving, and she was speeding too, and we passed the police, and we switched drivers because she didn't have license, and I switched drivers, and so he charged me with speeding. He didn't see us when we switched drivers, but he charged me for speeding, took all my money and stuff. I'm thinking that my father knew that he knew where we were, because while we were stopped by the police, he called my father while he was at. Oh gosh, why did you do that? So he told him that he stopped us, and so what, we were speeding and stuff, and then he told us that we were almost to Daytona.
Really?
And so when I got back about early Sunday morning, he didn't say anything. So just when we woke up during the day, I needed some money because the guy took all of my money, and what's wrong with the money I gave you? And I told him, and that's when he found out that we were speeding. But he knows that the police always stop him and stop us when we were down or driving around St. Augustine.
Now, were you living in St. Augustine?
No,
Or
just during summer.
But I'm saying your dad lived in St. Augustine.
Yes, my father lived in Florida.
But when he went to Mexico, was he?
Yes, he was living in St. Augustine. I went to Florida to spend the summer with him.
Right.
And he's going on the boat, and I'm going with him. I had no idea that you would end up in New Mexico to go fishing, and I was in the storm back in the early part of 15. It was in the early 50s when the storm, I don't forget the name of it, caught us out there, and it was rough. We thought we were going to drown out there, but it was it's too hard to tell. But he managed to bring that boat in, because we were in the ocean and we had to cross over, and the weather started down there, and boy, when it cut us, we were loaded with shrimp, and we shipped some, and you ship some when the boat going in to town to the States, and then when you come, you bring the rest. And we were loaded with shrimp, and there's no way that we was going to stay. You know, I mean, I had given up, but my father, and he maintained it all the way. He maintained it, and thank God I'm here today, because that was rough.
So you ended up in Chicago in the Navy, U.S. Navy,
mm-hmm.
And where did you get shipped out from there?
From the Navy, I mean, from boot camp, I spend the time, you give you 15 days at home,
mm-hmm.
and we come home, and you go back to what was it, Smith, Virginia.
Okay.
On board a destroyer, and I was one of the. There was only 3 blacks in my whole company,
mm-hmm.
and I was one of the blacks. It was 2 of us got transferred to the destroyer. The other was white. Not to make it different, but I'm just telling you the back then how things were. We know how
Sure.
things were.
How was your experience in the Navy?
Well, I'm getting to that. I'm getting to that. I was put on the deck force. You know that the fellas on the deck force to paint and to chip and paint and repaint and stuff like that. And I didn't want to be on the deck force. And I put in a transfer to go to the engineering division, and I was denied all the way.
Mm-hmm.
And what they had to do, I make sure that it went all the way to Beaufort, the Bureau of Naval. So it went there, and they agreed to the fact that I be come off the deck force, mm-hmm. and put into the engineering, mm-hmm. part. And I can remember today, the day as if it was yesterday. The guy's name was Perry, and he said, "You would like the engine room because it's hot, and it is good for your color." Mm-hmm. Down there in the, mm-hmm. engine room, he was angry because he was overstepped by the, mm-hmm. Bureau. And I went down in the engine room. I was the only back in the forward engine room. Mm-hmm. Forward engine room is the main engine room. There is two engine room on the ship, the forward and the after. But you have the forward engine room is where all of where decisions are made, and the after engine room is just follow suit. After they do the same thing, but they follow what happens in the first. And you want to change?
We're fine.
Okay. I got in the, remember the guy's name. Reinhardt was the second class officer, a petty officer in the forward engine room. And Bradley was a second class. But Reinhardt was in charge. Reinhardt put me in charge of all the recruits that came with me and in the forward engine room. And Reinhardt and Bradley, they told me, he said that you are in charge of them. In other words, and I don't know anything about, being in charge and stuff. He said that you are in charge. Whatever you tell them to do, we will back it. We will back you over. But if you don't tell them to do it, you're going to have to do it yourself. And so they took me under their wing and said that while they are doing the other work, like, cleaning the bilges and all the dirty work, we will teach you the engine room. And they did. And they did. I've been trying to find Reinhardt and Bradley, not so much Bradley, but Reinhardt. For years, he was from Jersey, but I can never find him. And I just want to thank him for the opportunity he gave me. Now, let me back up a little bit. When we finished in the Portsmouth, Virginia shipyard, the ship had to go to Guantanamo for training. And that's why I'm so familiar with Guantanamo. And during those years, we remember that Castro was fighting. And I can hear the guns and all that goes on. And where I was down in Gitmo, but I was on the ship. We'll go in and we'll go on the base and play ball and stuff like that and come back to the ship. But all the time I was learning, and there was a lot to learn about the engine room. And Reinhardt said to me that he admonished me that you are to learn the engine room, and if you don't learn it, you are going to be subject to the work. And while they were doing the work, the dirty work, and they were teaching me the whole engine room. We made water, we made the electricity, we made the combustion, and all the related in between that caused that. And he made sure that I knew how to do it. And one summer day, one day I was finished. I got orders from the destroyer. That's after we left Guantanamo and spent some time going overseas and all that on the USS Wren was the destroyer's name.
The Wren.
Wren, yes.
W-R-E-N?
E-N-N, Wren.
R-E-N.
I when I got back from, I don't know how many times or when overseas, but this time I was given orders for the, again, I had to request, and I get to know it denied every time, and when they got it from Bureau of Naval Personnel, I got transferred because they said, yes, he goes transfer from the USS Wren to the USS Grand Canyon. That was a repair ship, a big repair ship. It was stationed in Fall River, Mass. That's where they were stationed. But now, when I got back off leave from one Monday morning, I was downstairs in the engine room sleeping because I had it made like that because I knew my job by now. I knew my job. And I was told by the fellows, this yeoman, for who was black, he said, "You are leaving the ship today, whether you wanted to take a 14 days leave or not, you got to leave today." And I packed my bag and stuff, and by 9 o'clock I was off the ship, off the USS Wren. Now, Reinhardt was still there. He was slated to be discharged maybe a week or two after I left, and so was Bradley. And boy, I was so glad because they were laying for me. They were laying for me. I took the exam for a third-class petty officer. I didn't know because I was on the ship, on another ship, and the ship, when I got there, they were leaving, going back to the Mediterranean when I got it, and they were. It happened in the summer, and it was in November that they finally caught up with me that I had made third class petty officer. Oh man, I couldn't believe it. So I was made petty officer, third class.
But that's when you're on the other ship, on the Grand Canyon.
Grand Canyon, yes.
Did you work in the engine room of the Grand Canyon?
I didn't work in the engine room. I wanted to be in refrigeration.
Okay.
And that is a special kind of work.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. And so it's a large ship, man. We got reefers bigger than this room. It's full of food and stuff like that all over the ship. And yes, they put me in the reefers, in the refrigeration room, and I was in the refrigeration room for about a year, because before I knew I was third class, and I was going to be next to go into compartment cleaner. In other words, the new guys go into compartment cleaner and sweeping and cleaning and stuff like that. And I was next to go because they went to everybody and they was doubling up on me. I told them, and I wasn't never in compartment cleaning, but I told them, yes, I did compartment cleaning, but it was getting back to me. And lo and behold, this third-class petty officer came through for me, and the guy came and told me that you, as of whatever day that they took the test, that I was third-class petty officer from that day until now. And man, I couldn't wait. He told me on the Sunday afternoon, I couldn't wait until the store opened during the day, because I go and I buy my third class stripe. And the guy saw me with my stripe. What are you doing? Is he crazy? You know, say I'm crazy. Boy, I was most happy. And I started, I was working in the refrigeration room, but during this time, all the time, I put in for the refrigeration class, which is a school, a Class C school in Norfolk, Virginia. And again, I got disapproved, and got the Bureau of Naval Personnel. They gave me the go-ahead to go, and they wouldn't tell me. The chief tried to get the orders changed into his name, so he could go to keep me from going. But they told him I have to go because it's in my name, and I was expected down there. The ship got in on Sunday afternoon, and I'm to be there by 9 o'clock Monday morning. So I was one of the first one off of the ship, and they took me down to the train and got me on the train to go into Norfolk. And I stayed there, and I finished. Now, you go there, you know, it's a hard school. It's a school in refrigeration. And you said, I sure hope that I don't have to face these guys that go back. But I passed every time. And when I got back, I was the third class petty officer waiting for my next stripe. Now I'm taking my stripe. And I went on to second class petty officer. I got out as a petty officer, second class.
So how many years did you serve in the Navy?
I spent 4 years active in the Navy, and 4 years in the reserve, and I guess about 8 years I spent in the reserve.
So where did you live after you served in the Navy?
When my discharge come, I was discharged in Fall River, Mass, and I got I took the train down to New York City, Brooklyn, New York, where my brother was living, and I had a lot of relatives in Brooklyn, and that's where I began living. But knowing that I was going back and forth to Brooklyn when the ship was in town, we made a trip to Brooklyn by the ship, and so I know.
Did you go to the Navy Yard in Brooklyn?
Yes, I went to the Navy Yard in Brooklyn. I went to the Navy Yard after I was discharged in Brooklyn. I had a lot of involvement with the Brooklyn Yard. You want some water or something?
No, I'm fine. You're the one doing all the talking. You're the one doing all the talking.
Yeah. the Navy Yard was instrumental in when I got out of the Navy. Before I back up a little bit to speak on the fact that while I was in the Navy, I was in the shower in the Navy, taking a shower, and I scar myself from here right down, right on
So
down.
you're pointing to your left to the right side of your face, all the way down your chest.
Right down to my chest, all the way down to my penis.
Ooh.
I got burned. The water turned to steam.
Ooh.
Boom. And it was a Friday afternoon, and we was going to New York that day, and I went to the sick bay, and they took me in and they patched me up, and I still wanted to go to New York, and it was snowing up there, and man, oh man.
You must have been in pain.
Oh boy.
Oh,
and
Lord.
I so much pain. The guy, the corpsman who let me go to leave the ship, he almost got in. Well, he got in trouble. He got and that wasn't court-martial, but he got written up.
Yeah.
And when I came back to the hospital, to the hospital, on the ship, the burn was all over me. And I stayed in that for a number of weeks, laid up there on the ship hospital. And I got well, and I, for some reason or another, during my stay in the Navy, they had those Freon tanks, those big Freon. I used to lift those, it upstairs, downstairs, because, we had to get it down to the... And anyway, they found out that I had a condition in my chest. It's still there, that I couldn't do anything with. I went back and forth and back and forth. They found out that I was only, they found me disabled, but they wouldn't, forgive me, they wouldn't find it 10%. It has to do with the racism, and we know that. And they give me, I'm disabled, and my record is disabled, but only 10%, less than 10%. It didn't say how much less, it's less than 10%. So, in the years ensuing, I still had trouble. I went there again. I was in Georgia now. I was working for Marta, and those guys found me to be less than 10%, and I was painting a day, and it is still less than 10%. And the reason why they use that, they cannot find my record, because if you recall, the record was burned up in some place in Chicago that they had the fire back then, but they said the guys in Georgia said, I'm less than 10%.
Mm. So you were living, so after you were discharged, you got an honorable discharge from the Navy.
Yes.
And then you went to live in Brooklyn with your relatives.
Yes.
Well, and you must have been in your late 20s by that time.
Yes, I
guess you're in your mid-20s.
Mid-20s, yes.
Yeah. So what kind of work did you do in Brooklyn?
Well, I worked several different jobs. I worked for a company called, what's the name of the company? It's worked in copper. I can't remember the name. I can't remember his name right now. I used to remember, but I can't. I worked with them for a number of years, and until I decided to go to Transit Authority. I went to the Transit Authority in 1960.
Okay, and what kind of work did you do with the Transit Authority?
With the Transit Authority, I started off as a conductor on the train.
Did you were you trained as a
conductor?
Yeah.
Conductor, and then a few years, I was promoted to motorman. I trained for the motorman.
I wonder if I was I was 11 years old in 1960, and I went to every day that I went to high school, I would take a train. So I was probably on one of your trains.
Well, if it would depend on which train you took.
I took the number 4 and the Woodlawn Road train, Durham Avenue.
Oh, well, that's the train I drive.
Right.
I was saying that I was on the IRT.
Yeah.
I was on that train all the time. The IRT, the number 2, the number 1, and all of those on IRT train. I transferred, as you can get a better job and stuff. And I'm certain you must have drove my train.
Well, I used to get on at Fordham Road. And then get off at Bedford Park Boulevard.
Oh man!
Because I went to Bronx High School of Science. And walked over.
Oh boy! You wait a minute. You would get off at get on.
Well, we lived on Pelham Parkway. So you used to take the bus, the Fordham Road bus, to the train, and then take the train over.
Okay. Yes, man. Oh boy, you have to have ridden my train, because many times you could have ridden my train at Pelham, from Pelham, because I drove that line also. I was a steward over on Pelham rail line. Right.
So how many years did you work for the Transit Authority?
I didn't work enough. I worked about 9 years.
And were you active in the union?
Yes.
Transport Workers Union?
Yes.
Now, I remember there was a...
strike.
There was Mike Quinn was the head of...
Yes.
Mike Quill was the head of the union.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was John Lindsay was the mayor.
Yes, I know John Lindsay. I used to meet with John Lindsay because of my political affiliation in Brooklyn. We used to meet and talk with him. Sam Wright. His name was Sam Wright. He was an assemblyman and a lawyer, and he got some things done in the legislature, and he is responsible for the Ocean Hill school board.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yes.
Ocean Hill Brownsville.
Well, yes.
That's interesting.
Yes. Yes, indeed. I was there. Okay, but it is no longer.
You were not involved in the teachers' strike in 1968.
Huh?
Were you involved in the 1968 teachers' strike?
Was I involved? Yes, I was involved. Yes, very, very much so.
Wow.
Yes, I don't remember the guy's name. I used to know all of them.
Yeah.
I knew all of them. Yes, the superintendent of school was a Jewish fellow. What's his name? Oh man, I know. I think he's still living there. I knew them all. I just can't remember now that I had the
So, did you become active in the union when you were
Yes,
worked on the trains?
I was a steward, and as far as I got as a steward, but I attended the meetings and stuff like that.
Then why did you get involved in the union?
Why did I get involved?
Yeah.
I figured that it was the best thing for everybody because it was working for the betterment for people. For people, regardless of the people, whoever worked in transit in that organization, all of the unions, and as you know, in New York, they were more unionized there than with us. But that's what I got involved. But to think back, you get involved, you really don't know why you get involved. But it was something that I wanted to do, and I did it. And I did it because, I used to drive the work trains and stuff like that. And the work train is considered a cream of the crop, not necessarily the cream of the crop, wherever you're going. But the work train is at night, And I know that they used to do us any kind of way. I was working for on the work train when John S. Kennedy was killed. I was on the Flushing line when John F. Kennedy, when we got the news, was John F. Kennedy was killed. I was working the work train on Flushing Avenue. I know where it was. I can't call the street, but it was a very sad day. We were working, trying to get the World's Fair. If you remember, the World Fair were there. We were building up the World Fair and also the Shea Stadium right there. But why I get involved is that it seemed like it was a natural thing for me to do. And I wanted to help people, and I help people, and I help them politically, be politically associated with different people. I knew all of the people that I needed to know in
So were you living in Brooklyn this whole
yes,
time?
I've lived in Brooklyn, yes. I never lived anywhere but Brooklyn.
Did you live in, where'd you live in Brooklyn?
At first I lived on Pacific.
Okay.
Pacific, and what's the cross street? Ralph Avenue. Ralph Avenue. And then after I get married, we move on Hopkinson and Atlantic Avenue. There's the building that they built there on Hopkinson and Atlantic Avenue.
Now, you were married the first time.
Yes.
What was your first wife's name?
Eunice Hamilton.
Eunice. And how long were you married? When did you get married to her?
Oh, no, I definitely don't remember that.
Okay.
But it was before Anthony was born.
Okay, so more than 43 years ago.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And,
So Anthony, Bernard,
and
Denise.
No, Anthony, Bernard, Michelle is the same mother, and
Denise and Kina.
Denise and Kina. Oh, Denise is my third wife.
Okay.
No, another wife.
So you were married to Eunice, and then
Yes.
who's your Peggy's?
Peggy, and then Bernice.
Okay. Okay. So Bernice Hamilton.
Jordan.
Jordan Hamilton.
Yes.
And was that in Brooklyn?
Yes. No. We got married. We were dating up there, but we got married in South Carolina.
Okay. And what about, where'd you get married to Eunice?
In Brooklyn.
Brooklyn. Okay. And do you remember when you married Bernice?
Man, before somebody, and Denise was a little girl.
Okay.
I don't remember.
Okay.
Yes.
So when did you worked for the New York City Transit Authority for about 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
That would be until about 1969.
It's 8 or 9 years. I don't remember. Yeah. Yes, about 1969.
Where'd you go after that?
I went to the borough president's office.
Oh, you did? Wow.
Yes, I worked for the borough president.
The Brooklyn Borough President.
Brooklyn Borough President.
Who was that?
A. Beam.
Oh, A. Beam, who eventually became mayor.
Yes, he eventually became mayor, and
he was mayor when New York City filed bankruptcy.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a teacher at that time. I was a New York City teacher.
Yes. Well, what Al Shanker?
Al Shanker was the head of the teacher union.
Yes. Al Shanker was asking too much money for the teacher, but that's all. I mean, he had to do what he did.
Yeah.
Well, no question about it.
Uh-huh.
But I know all the guys used to be the rep.
So you involved in Democratic Party politics?
I was highly involved in Democratic politics, and I was a liaison for community, anything that's going on in a particular section of the Brooklyn. One of us would go and see about it and come back and report it to him, and he will do something about it. I worked for him a number. I don't know, about two years.
Oh, really?
Yes, for 2 years, and then I left there, and I went to the manpower program, and I was in charge of the manpower program, which would cause people to get acquainted with different work habits and follow up. We follow up their work and keep them in work until, the program was very successful, I don't know by now. And during the summertime, we gave neighborhood youth corps jobs. And one of the people I gave jobs to as the neighborhood youth corps, you wouldn't believe it, Al Sharpton.
Oh, really?
Yes. I every summer I gave him, because he had a few people that was working for him, and I would give him so many slots that he would allow his people to come to be employed with the neighborhood youth corps, and left. But all of the time that I was involved in the job with the borough president and the manpower, I was also politically involved during the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And we held many demonstrations on Mayor Lindsay, right there at City Hall, across the bridge, all of this stuff I really knew. And after I left there, I got a job with the what's the school? Environmental protection.
Was that for the federal government or for the city?
No, that was a private concern out of California, and I joined them. I worked for them about a year, and I was always traveling from Atlanta to all of the southern state for what's the name of the company? But anyway, I went all over the place trying to get contract for the school through the. So I can't remember. But anyway, I moved from New York to Atlanta, down with a company.
Oh, you did. That's why you moved to Atlanta.
Yes, they. Well, I would. They.
And that must have been about 1972.
When in 72, maybe just before.
That's just when New York City was about to file bankruptcy.
Yes. Listen, let me.
By the way, I was a teacher in New York City from 72 to 76.
Oh, really? Mm.
I was a high school math teacher.
I just sorry I can't remember those guys. Very good.
So you moved to Atlanta with this company.
I got to Atlanta because I didn't want to go to California.
Okay.
And they sent me here to do just that, from Texas, all the places I can't think of them.
The southeast.
Yes, I have to travel around the southeast to let the people know to engage them in contract with this company.
Yeah.
Yes. And
so how long did you do that?
I did it for must be 2 years or something, and then I went back to New York.
Oh, you did?
Yes. I didn't move my family to New York, but I went back to New York, and I went back because of persuasion from other people, and because I was I thought that I was destined to go further in politics, And had I stayed there, I would have. When Charlie Hamilton, no relation to mine, he became assemblyman. Charlie ran because Major Owens knocked me off of the ballot.
I remember Major Owens.
Yes, Major Stillin, he knocked me off of the ballot because I had come to Atlanta, and I got an Atlanta address, and so they used that. Say that.
And what were you running for? Assemblyman.
Assemblyman, yes.
Mm-hmm. And that was from Brooklyn.
Yes, I was, and then, so when he knocked me out, we would put Charlie Hamilton. He stayed in there for a long time. And Charlie Hamilton, he became the director of the what's the horse racing?
Oh, the off-track betting.
Yes, off-track betting. He became director. He died since then, though.
Mm-hmm.
He died since then. So that's was the story of my life. In that part of my life, but a lot of things in between. I moved from Hopkinson to Lastonia. No, not Lastonia. No.
This is still in Brooklyn.
And Brooklyn. What's the going out to Queens? Going out to Atlantic Avenue, going out of Lindbergh.
Oh, okay.
Is it Lindbergh?
I grew up in the Bronx.
Lindbergh and is the development over there. That's where I landed. Over there, and I was still involved in everything. While we were involved in Brooklyn and all over Brooklyn, we started the anti-poverty program in Brooklyn. Bed-Stuy. Well, we had warehouses of food and clothes before this became fashionable for when people got burned out and stuff like that. We had all of this stuff put up for them. I just can't think of but I was in Brooklyn. I was the executive secretary of a highly regarded political club in Brooklyn. And we dealt with schools and housing. We got housing for people, elderly. There's a lot of stuff. I got kids in school, in college, all over Brooklyn. I've got a lot. There's a lot to tell about, but I did it not looking for anything, but just doing it. Just doing it. We had application for college students way back, and got kids in. I walk in the kids when I'm in New York. I didn't even know that they knew me, because I helped them one day. Mm-hmm. Yep. Now I got involved in MATA.
When did you move back to Atlanta again?
Oh, my family never moved, remember?
Yeah, I thought your family stayed in Brooklyn.
Oh, no. my family stayed, Bernice and the kids the two kids. I was married to there. I got a divorce from Eunice.
Yeah.
Yes. Now I came back to Atlanta and go.
So your family was living in Atlanta, or living in Brooklyn?
Oh, which one now?
Now the Bernice was
Bernice here. She was living in Brooklyn.
Okay.
But we moved here to Atlanta.
Okay.
Atlanta was her home, and I wanted to come to Atlanta. I don't know why, but I wanted to come to Atlanta. I didn't want to raise my kids in New York, although they made it all right. They got through it all right. One is here now, my son, and my daughter just left. She's in California. And my other son is in New Jersey. He's an assemblyman in New Jersey.
And that is Anthony.
No, that is Bernard.
Bernard, okay.
Yes, he's
He's a city councilman.
City councilman,
yeah, right.
Yes, city councilman. And my wife was, while I worked in New York with the manpower the second time, with a different manpower with East New York, then my wife was living here.
Okay, so when did you finally move to Atlanta?
Oh, I came, must be about 73, 74, something like that.
And then that was the second time you moved to Atlanta?
Mm-hmm. Yes, my second time. I didn't really move.
But second time you were living in Atlanta?
Yeah, living in Atlanta.
So that was 73, 74. What did you do then?
What job? I was still, I gave up the job with environmental. Anyway,
yeah.
I gave that job up, but I wasn't working when I first got here, but I was working with Abernathy, who was running for Congress.
Okay.
And
that's Ralph Abernathy.
Okay. Who was running for Congress. And we got to the point where we told him I was the closest to him. I woke him up in the morning, and I, was with him at his home when he got home at night. So we were very close, and we talked him to give up the race because it was Lewis to win.
Actually, Lewis won. That was in 1980. Lewis was elected.
He won from him.
Let me stop.
Yeah.
Involved in that race?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. In the first, it was Weisfowler, and I forget about Weisfowler myself, but he was a good man, good councilman. What is he doing now?
Weisfowler, was a city council member before he was on the
council president.
Then he became U.S. Senator.
Yes.
Then he became ambassador to Saudi Arabia.
He's not the U.S. Senator.
No.
Yeah, he's congressman.
Then he
became ambassador to
Saudi Arabia under Clinton.
Oh, okay.
And then he now he's retired.
Oh man! Oh gosh, very good. He reminded me of John Lindsay.
Yeah.
Lindsay died on Hilton Head.
Just a few years ago. That's
Yeah,
right. He was in a nursing home in Hilton Head.
Hilton
That's
Head.
right.
Yes. Yep.
So Lindsay came from a wealthy family.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Where are we now? Where?
So you're living in Atlanta. You worked on Abernathy's campaign. And when did you go to work for Marta?
In 79.
79. And why did you go to work for Marta after all this political stuff you were doing?
Well, my political activities were in the North, but my political activity also stretched down south because Maynard knew about me, Shirley knew about me, and Basil Patterson. You know Basil Patterson. He was the Secretary of State. He was a senator when I knew him. And I was working with him closely on political things, and he wrote Maynard Jackson.
Basil Patterson was New York State Secretary of State.
Yeah.
Right.
And I, like I said, I knew him then, and I know him now. He wrote to what's his name? Not Jackson.
Yeah, Maynard Jackson.
Maynard Jackson, and about my, he wrote all about me, and I should give him and Jackson called me, and he wrote me a letter, and he said that he, just as soon as he changed the council, that he would be in touch with me.
Yeah.
And I'm a person like this. I don't remind you. You know what you need to do, and we gave him money. We had a guy, Jules Sugarman.
Who's that?
And Jules Sugarman, this is
Julie Sugarman?
out of New York, and he came down here.
I don't remember him.
Well, he did. I may get around name. He knows.
Yeah.
But I never. Father, I get the letter downstairs right now. That Jackson has promised to look into it, or when he got that city council straightened out. And then I joined Marta because I did not know anything about driving the bus. I joined because I was told that they would promote from within. They don't do too much hiring.
Right.
And I joined that. I was trying to move into the office. I interviewed with the CEO for the job at one time. The CEO was he went to New York too, and he retired now. What's the name? You know him. You all know him.
Yeah.
And I thought I would get that job, but his secretary was working with him, and then he gave it to him to her. And then I applied for another job, which was director was, I believe it was, I'm trying to remember, the having to do with labor studies, something related, but they didn't give it to me because somebody was working in the job, and they gave it to him. Told me that don't give up. We'll get to you later. And I just put in for several different jobs. And when I saw that they were not going to promote me because of my attitude, I guess you would say.
But this is after you were working for MARTA?
Yes.
And you were a bus operator?
Mm-hmm. I was a bus operator.
And how long did you work as a bus operator?
I worked over 25 years.
Did you? But weren't you a train operator?
Oh yeah. Well, all that is.
But you worked. So you worked as both a bus.
I worked as a train operator about 11 years.
Okay. But so you're a bus operator and a train operator.
Yes, I went to the train and I finished the train, and then I became the union president.
Okay.
From there. And I just didn't bother with them anymore because I said to them, all of you know that I'm here. If you want me, you will send for me. And they all know me, and this guy, even today, they're still there. So they thought that they thought that I must knew much more than they did, and no, not at all. I didn't know about the railroad. I told them that, but I could add something to them, and it never happened. So I became the union president.
But there was a lot in between. We were skipping over a lot of things. How did you get involved in the ATU, in the MARTA union?
TWU.
Well, the ATU.
ATU
here in Atlanta.
I was always a union member. I joined as soon as I became a bus driver. I would want to be a union. Although I was looking to go to management, but I always felt that they needed a union. And not that they need a union, but you have to have the union to make people do right. And that's what I did. And I was always instrumental in bringing up arguments in the union.
Were you a steward with ATU?
Yeah.
So you're a bus operator steward. And how did you continue to be active in the union in ATU?
Well, as a bus driver and as a train operator, I was active in the union. Because I would, when things happened on the job, they would call me and I would intercede about the situation. I just got involved, whatever it was.
There was a lot of dissension in the ATU at this time, wasn't there?
Yeah, was dissension in the union.
Or controversy, or
before my time, where there was controversy, including JC, when he was president.
That was Mr. Reynolds. That
was
J.C. Reynolds.
Yes.
Okay.
There was controversial. It was a controversy when I lost to him because they think.
Well, let's you're skipping over. When did you first run for president of ATU?
Oh, I can tell the year I did. but I ran for maybe 3 times.
You ran 3 times,
Right,
and
3
and
times.
weren't the elections very close?
Well, that's what was very close, and they thought that I won the first time, and JC, when he thought that I won the first time and the second time was that with him, he tried to get me, said, well, why don't you run for secretary or something like that and leave it alone. I mean, he must have thought that he would. And I told him then, I said, I'm going to be true to myself and to the people that I talk to. And I said that I would run for the president, and I'm going to run for the president. And sure enough, I lost again.
Didn't you lose by 1 vote at one time? I mean, it was very, very close.
He was the person that I was, yes. And he got to the point that he would. Did it run 3 times or 4 times? I'm not sure. But he realized that he would have to go, and he was in with the president, which he should be, the president of the union, ETU, and he got the president to name him vice president, and then, but became now the time for Burris, Johnny McBurris.
Yeah.
But in between, I think Tommy, no, that was before. Tommy was before. That was the controversial. It was during those periods, was very controversial.
So you were finally elected president, and
Yes.
who served as your vice president and secretary?
My vice president was Benita West, and the secretary was William Swain, Bill Swain.
And you ran on? Did you run on a ticket together?
Yes, we ran together.
And what was your platform when you ran? What did you want to accomplish?
Well, I don't really. You must forgive me right now, but I can't remember. I have my papers outside. Yeah. Had I known,
yeah,
I would. But we ran with the understanding that we could do better by having a president and a vice president and the secretary speaking from the same table. And we did that. We did that until the vice president listened to some outsiders saying that she could be the president, and then she ran against me the next time.
That's when Danny DuBose became vice president.
That's when Danny DuBose became.
So when you were first elected, there were lots of things you wanted to accomplish in the union. What were some of those things?
Well, one of the things was that we wanted to first the pension. You remember the pension? We wanted to make it more equitable for retirees to get more money after they retired. And there was some doings to get that.
I mean, you worked very hard to do that.
Yes,
that was
yes.
I was involved in that,
Yes,
and
yes.
that was very difficult.
Yes, that was difficult, and also we had MARTA, and we had the MARTA and the union president. Reynolds at the time had concocted something to allow Reynolds to retire other than what the contract said.
In other words, Reynolds was working for the International Union.
Yeah, he was working for the International Union.
But was retired from MARTA.
Retired from MARTA, and he was drawing more than he was supposed to draw. We wanted to straighten that out, but we missed it, really. Didn't miss the fact of straightening it out, but the tape that where Reynolds was on tape, you remember when we gave it to the lawyer or somebody, and he was supposed to copy, and they come back and says there was nothing on the tape.
Oh,
Yes,
okay.
yes.
All right.
Yes, but anyway, ever since that, the then vice president of MARTA, he was shaky because he went to where did he go to some place and it's work with the union over there. Not the union, but the management.
Was this when Ken Gregor was the?
No, Ken Gregor was there, but before Ken, when
Ken Gregor was general manager.
Yeah, but anyway, he went over there, and he thought that we were going to come up and find him and JC all liable for what they did, but they got away with that. The union, international union, we talked to the union, and he didn't want to fire him because he told me that he would fire him if he found that he did something like that, but he didn't fire him. He made him pay the money back, and we got it straight like that.
He eventually repaid the money to the pension fund.
To the pension fund, yes.
And wasn't Reynolds killed eventually?
Reynolds was killed within his church by, mind you, she was a member of the union.
Oh, really? She was a MARTA employee?
MARTA employee.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Oh.
She was a MARTA employee, and she killed him.
But that was, she's killed Reynolds and some other people?
And a mother.
And a mother.
Oh. And then she killed herself. I don't remember. She died shortly thereafter. Mm-hmm. Yes. And those were bad times. But eventually, I prevailed as the president of the union. And there were so many things that over the time that the union wasn't doing, I thought that it should be doing as a union, the union president, but he was just getting along for himself.
But do you remember in 2001, there were some major changes in the pension, and the benefits were dramatically improved.
Yes, the pension.
And that was a direct result of changes in the pension fund and the way it was managed.
Oh, yes, this whole thing was changed because before it was the lawyer who was there. I forgot his name.
It was David Rock.
David Rock, and the pension. What's his name?
Well, it was Claudia Burgess, and eventually the board hired an outside administrator.
Yes, you helped me on that. We hired, and they thought that we were doing wrong, but we hired an outside administrator that was separate from the MARTA employees, somebody who could give some attention to the pension fund and the people that was retiring. To my estimate, I think a lot of money just went by the wayside with that arrangement. It's it's not that it's money that is not going by the wayside now, but is not as it was before. And when you had the gentleman was doing the same thing that Larry Gray is doing now.
Yes, the investment consultant.
And he got who he wanted to be on the pension board and that kind of stuff. So eventually that was changed.
So the investment consultant, the pension fund manager, and you hired different attorneys.
Different attorneys.
I mean, I was hired, and Robert Sundberg.
And Sundberg was hired, and I thought it was better. I know that it wasn't going to let us have one without the other. But Sundberg seemed to be a good guy, and I was surprised that they didn't try to change you instead of we told them about it. They were making a mistake, but they listened evidently. I was through with that. He wouldn't have been able to keep you off of that because we were going to have an attorney regardless because of what happened. So he might have hem and haw, but we were going to eventually get an attorney on the
and that was Nat Ford, and and you were concerned about some of the financial doings of the pension fund.
Always, I was concerned about that, and I just can't remember all of the things that I should have had.
Well, I remember many meetings when you and Benita and Bill Swain just walked out.
Yes. There were meetings that weren't going anywhere. That was with the. That was before Nat.
That was before Nat Ford. In fact, Nat was on the board for a short time.
Yeah.
And Degas Wright was on the board.
Yes.
And Degas Wright was on the board.
Yes, there we go.
And
yes, there we go.
And there was nothing getting done.
Yes, nothing.
And finally, the board then eventually, MARTA management agreed with the union to hire an outside administrator. And that's what did it.
That's what we're trying to do. Claudia was just she's an employee with other duties, what she had to do, but she got around to the pension whenever she wanted to, So I mean, there was so many things wrong with that. And eventually, if there was only one thing that I did was was the pension to be separated from that?
From MARTA. Let me mention something else. You negotiated a collective bargaining agreement with MARTA, with Nat Ford,
Yes,
right
yes.
before September 11th, 2001. Tell me about that.
Well, I negotiated with MARTA, and I really didn't know how much money they had. I know they had some money, but what they had was not now. And we bargained, and we got down to 11.75%, if I'm not mistaken. And with the back pay, with all of the time that we have lost in negotiation, everything would be paid. And that was when Benita started listening to the other people, and we should reject that. MARTA can do more. Well, I know that the company was not going to go back and negotiate, and especially when they know that the governor not going to do that. And she said that we can get more, and voted to reject that contract.
And then, in the meantime, September 11th, 2001 occurred.
Yes.
And sales tax revenues went down.
Yes. And that was the most hurting. I thought that we hurt ourselves by rejecting that contract, because they would have found some money to continue to pay us. That they wasn't going to say, no, we ain't got no money, They would have paid us. But now they got all the back money they mustered up on they are not paying us until the contract is signed. They got all that money. And what were we going to lose by that? We had 11.5% increase, and we reject that.
Now, you were in the midst of an election at that time as well.
Yes.
In other words, you were up for re-election. And in fact, you came in second in the runoff.
In the runoff, yes.
And you and Benita were running against each other at that time.
Yes. Very, very.
That must have been a difficult time period.
Well, not for me, is that I'm like this. I've always been this way. Is that you do what you can, as long as you did it honest. And I did nothing dishonest. I did everything by board, and they tell it that I stole the money. I know that wasn't true. That wasn't true. And if they voted me out, I'm gone. I'm not. I'm not there. But they voted to keep me.
So you won the election against Benita.
Yes, I won.
And what happened with the contract eventually?
The contract. The contract now goes to the governor, and we met over that, and we have the state people to meet over it. We met with the.
So went to fact finding.
Yes, the fact finders, and they came up with this what it should be, and we lost days. I mean, allow us to buying the days with holidays and sick time and all of this stuff. Though that we didn't get it then, we were supposed to have the extra board people working any kind of way. That was we didn't do that at all, but they did not give us any kind of money that we were supposed to.
In fact, the judge ended up giving you nothing.
The judge, yes, we got what was a normal increase.
Yeah.
Yes, we ended up nothing. And Benita, and although I tried to help her win this election, the past election, and she couldn't do it. She would have did it if she didn't have some people talking about, that contract. Yes, that contract.
Now, Benita was very instrumental with you in changing the pension fund and other things.
Yes, she was.
Now, one other issue that Benita and you worked on was the midlife car rehab issue.
Oh,
that
yes.
was a big issue.
That's a big issue. Yes. Oh boy!
That resulted
I forgot about that.
The rail yard over at Lindbergh.
Yes.
Rail yard is because of that.
Yes, and it is there right now. When you come there,
That's right.
You will see it.
And the union eventually filed the grievance over that.
Yes,
and that was worth a lot of money. That was a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Marta was contracting out the rail car rehab work.
Yes.
When they had agreed to give it to the employees.
Yes, the union, right. And a lot of it, as you can see and remember, since I had the stroke, that I forget about.
Sure.
Forget about it. But when you bring things to my attention, then I remember it. But we did a lot. I say that I did a lot within the 3 years that I served.
But you actually served for
6 years.
6 years,
Yes,
right?
yes.
Right.
Yes.
You changed the pension fund. You had that midlife rehab program.
Yes.
And the union really came back to life with grievances and very active.
Yeah, we had grievances. We were getting grievances done. We were getting things done. I don't know. I hope that they're getting it done. Now, a lot of people were fired. A lot of what we got back for no reason at all. They were fired for no reason at all. Wasn't justified, but we got them back because of some of them should be fired. I tell you, but because of how the individual, the managers handle it. They didn't handle it right. We got them back on that kind of stuff.
So you think the pension fund issue was very important in your service as president? Now, you were also involved in lots of civil rights activities while you were president.
Well, and yes, I was involved in civil rights, and I'm still am. I think that a union person and a person who cares about the people, and I want to make it sure and straight that it's not white people, because some of them are doing things that is detrimental to their own health and to their own well-being. But we just think that people should live better in a country that is wealthy as this country is. And I know that other countries are doing worse than this, but you start here, and then you would spread that abroad. I always attended the NAACP convention. I always extended the labor part of the convention and bring ideas to their mind. I'm not as active as I once was, but I'm going to get back active because that's the only thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing else to do.
What do you think of the labor movement compared to these days now, compared to the way it was when you started out in New York City and elsewhere?
Well, I will say to it, because of the communication that was lacking between us all over everywhere, and the people find out that they can cause other people to work for you for less in other countries, it is hurting us in America, but not going overseas in the South. The South has always been a bastard for working people. I don't care who it is, black or white. They have always been bastard, and they could have been much more richer than they could have been, because they didn't want to organize the black people. At the time, there was more blacks in the southern state that doing menial work than now. They got Mexican people coming to do this work, and that question really evolved into a whole nother discussion, because you can take what happened in the South with the people that they brought in to stymie the advance of black people, and to carry that all the way to another story. But I think that labor is seeing a very, very hard time, and in order to get back where it was, and if I have my doubt if they get back to where it once was, it is going to be a hard road to hoe. Believe me, be it for black people, white people, brown people, or other nationality, they are going to use that. And people, and I can understand it, they are getting more in America than they would get anywhere else in the world. So then you can rest assured you would fight for a hell of a long time before you get change. And when we all can enjoy a medium of a decent living for everyone.
Is that why you were involved in organized labor?
Well, I guess it boils down to that, but it wasn't my intention of being involved in organized labor, because I did not know what all entailed in the organized labor. But as I grow older and learn more, I realize that organized labor is the salvation for working people, and it wasn't not giving the money away. You have some mess up, some people who are stone messed up, but the majority of people will give you a day's work for a day's pay. And maybe that's why I get involved with labor, and I'm not ashamed of a minute of it. I love every moment I spend, and I will spend the rest of my days trying to get people to join, as long as there is someone who is trying to do what is right and what is decent for the people, all of the people. And we cannot live in this country by being black, and we cannot live by being all white. Now, if things were that, then they should have left us in Africa when we were fighting each other. But you bring us to this country, and we built this country, and then you turn against us. I think it's a shame. It's a shame for you to have people. We all eat and drink and breathe the same thing. We happen to be different color, but it means nothing. There is some black people that I don't want to be no closer than I have to get with. And there is some white people that I admire them. And there is some white folks, and I know that they hate me, and I don't want to, but I'm just saying that I want to be as normal as I possibly can with everybody. I will be normal with those guys, black or white, but they don't let me. They have hateful feeling towards other people and hateful feeling towards me. So I stay away from it. That's all I do. I stay away. Yes.
Well, is there anything else that you think is important that we should, that you want to say?
Well, I would say that there is going to be some other things that come up in the meantime, and that I just can't remember it all right now. And if it's not too much, then I would call you and maybe we do a supplement to it.
Okay.
Because I know that there is something that I just don't remember right off.
Okay.